Hello, fifth and sixth graders. Welcome to the last English unit of the school year for this particular school year. This one is taking a look at Unit 5, Unit 5, Week 5, and it's dealing with punctuation. And there's quite a few different punctuation marks that we're going to explore for this being our last English unit of the school year. So the first type of punctuation mark we're going to take a look at is something called a semicolon. Semicolon kind of looks like, if you're drawing one of those smiley faces, looks like one of them's an eye and one of them's winking at you. The semicolon is this one right here. Okay, it's got the dot with a comma above it. This is a semicolon. Now, a semicolon can be used a couple of different ways. One of the ways a semicolon can be used is to separate the two parts of a compound sentence when you do not have to worry about using a comma or a conjunction. Now, we've studied this in the past where you might have one sentence and then you put comma and or comma or comma but. Instead of putting the comma conjunction, you could just put a semicolon only and that would be acceptable. So here's a couple of examples of what I'm talking about. Southerners migrate to the north, semicolon, they often took the train. Now, if I was going to use this is obviously a compound sentence, I'm joining two sentences together. One of the ways we learned about doing this sentence before is that Southerners migrate to the north, comma, and they often took the train. Okay, that could be one way to do it. In this particular situation, we can get rid of the comma and just put a semicolon only. And that's why we have Southerners migrate to the north, semicolon, they often took the train. So these are two independent sentences that are being joined together by a semicolon. Another example, some people make their own clothes, semicolon, they can buy them at the store. Now this would be an example where we might put comma or, but instead of put a comma or, we can just put semicolon. Some people make their own clothes, they can buy them at the store. Last example for this one. My neighbors mow their yard every week. We mow ours twice a month. Again, you could put here comma but, like my neighbors mow their yard every week, comma but we mow ours. Instead of putting that comma but there, you just put a semicolon. So my neighbors mow their yard every week, semicolon, we mow ours twice a month. Okay, so that's one way to use a semicolon in a particular sentence. Another way to use semicolon is if you're going to use it to separate a series of events where commas are already used in your series. Now, normally if you have a series of things like I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to buy, apples, oranges, grapes. If you have a series of events, usually you're going to put commas in there. But sometimes when you go to list a series, commas are actually already being used. So if commas are being used in your series, you would actually use semicolons instead to avoid where the comma should go. Here's a couple of examples. The soccer team included Adam Hoyt, and now we put comma, sophomore. What this is saying is that Adam Hoyt is a sophomore. So the soccer team included Adam Hoyt, comma, sophomore. Now we're going to put a semicolon here because we used a comma to separate the fact that this is who he is and this is what his grade is. So Adam Hoyt, comma, sophomore. Then we put a semicolon. Matthew Thomas, comma, senior. So that's telling us that Matthew Thomas is a senior. So a comma, senior. Then we have a semicolon here. And Joshua John should be comma, junior. This should not be a semicolon. That should just be a comma. Okay. So in this case, I should have two semicolons. Semicolon here. Semicolon here, not a semicolon here. I'll go ahead and change that as we go back through the other one, okay? Sometimes if you have lists of numbers, notice that semicolons can help there too. Like the attendance for the last 4 games were, okay, we got 56,237. That's one number. So in order to avoid, because sometimes we have numbers that have commas, if we put commas every time, that could be really, really confusing. What is the numbers? So we're gonna put 56,237, then we put a semicolon. Then we have 59,411, another semicolon, 55,987, semicolon, and 60,464. So now by using those semicolons, you can distinctly see the attendances for the last 4 games without there being a whole lot of confusion between the numbers. The next one we're going to talk about is a colon, which looks like a semicolon, except this time a colon is going to have your two dots. So it'd be a dot over a dot. Okay. A colon is going to be used after the salutation of a business letter. In case you don't know what a salutation is, that's kind of the greeting. Like if you're going to write your friend a letter or an email, sometimes you might start by saying, Dear Stephanie. So she's your friend, you would put a comma there. But if you're going to write a business letter, if you're writing a letter to like a company, maybe to the president of a company, or maybe you're writing an official letter to ask for a job, it's always better to put a semicolon if you're going to write a business letter. And then you're also going to use a semicolon to separate the hours and the minutes whenever you're trying to express a period of time. So here's a couple examples of what I'm talking about. Let's see. I did the following chores. Oh, another way you can do a semicolon is if you, I think it's on the next page. If you're going to list if you're going to list a whole bunch of things, it's always good to use that semicolon right before you have the list. So I did the following chores, colon, wash the car, clean my room, and swept the porch. Okay. Another one here. We visited the following cities. We have colon, Appleton, comma, Green Bay, comma, and Manitowoc. Now here's what we're talking about. We're talking about the salutations. If I'm writing a letter, Dear Mr. President. Now, obviously, I'm not best friends with the president, so it's more of a business meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and put a business letter, I'm going to go ahead and put that colon there. Or for example, I want to talk about, it's 10:30 a.m. Obviously, you're going to put a colon between your hour and your minutes, okay, before you put a.m. there. Next one is dashes. Dashes, now in this case, dashes are a little bit longer. It was hard for me to put a dash on this, so I actually put two little lines, but usually it's one massive, big, huge, long dash. So a dash is going to set off information that kind of interrupts the flow of a sentence. Sometimes we put information in the middle of the sentence that kind of interrupts the flow of what I'm actually trying to say. And in those situations, you want to put a dash. Here's a couple of examples. Southerners, they include my relatives, suffer in the winter weather. Now, my sentence is just Southerners suffered in the winter weather. That's my sentence. Subject, Southerners. Verb, suffered. Notice I just threw some random thoughts in the middle of my sentence that really interrupts the flow of my sentence. If you ever have that where you're interrupting the flow of your sentence, you want to put a dash in front as well as a dash behind it. Because what you're saying with these dashes is everything that's in the middle here can be taken out of the sentence, and the sentence still makes sense. Because if I take everything that's in here out of the sentence, my sentence is now, Southerners suffer in the winter weather. Okay? Here's another example. My grandparents, they live in another state, will be coming to our house for Christmas. Notice I've got some words here that kind of interrupt the flow of my sentence. Like my grandparents will be coming to our house for Christmas. This is the actual sentence right here. They live in another state. That kind of interrupts the flow of the sentence. And since this interrupts the flow of the sentence, I want to go ahead and put a dash out in front as well as a dash behind to show that everything here can be taken out of the sentence and the sentence still makes sense. Okay? Next is a hyphen, which kind of looks like a dash, except it's a little bit smaller. Now, hyphens can be used in certain compound words. I believe that we've had spelling units in the past where some of the compound words either had a hyphen in them or they had a space in them, okay? So some compound words could have hyphens in them. Sometimes you would put them in compound adjectives that are usually found right before nouns. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. And also, whenever you're trying to spell out numbers, so instead of writing the number 22, you're actually spelling the word 22. You put a hyphen between them. And then obviously you're going to do that for some two-word nouns. So here's some examples. This would be an example of a compound adjective that comes right before a noun. Let's say this is a well-dressed man. Well-dressed should be a compound adjective that comes right before a noun. Usually put a hyphen in between those two. Okay. Another one. 45. Instead of writing the digits 4, 5, I'm actually spelling the word 45. And if you ever go to do that, you're going to spell out 45 like that. You want to put a hyphen in between the 40 and the 5. Same thing here. There are 26 letters in the alphabet. If you're going to spell out the word 26, you need to have a hyphen between the 20 and the 6 whenever you're spelling them out. And then here's another one of those examples of some two-word nouns. Self-esteem should have a hyphen in between them. And 5th and 6th graders, I would make note of the word self-esteem. You might see that again on one of your sheets for coming up this week. So keep in mind that self-esteem should have a hyphen in between that. Little hint from Mr. Johnson on that one. Next one is a set of parentheses. Parentheses usually is going to set off additional information that is not essential. And usually these parentheses are usually found towards the end of the sentence. Just kind of, it's additional information, but it's not incredibly important to the sentence. Here's an example. The documentary will air on television next week. And then here you notice, check your local listings. We would put all of this inside parentheses. It's right at the end. It's not really essential. This is just for your information. Hey, you might want to check your local listings as to what TV station it's going to be on. But this is more the valuable information. The documentary will air on TV next week. Check your local listings. Or another example would be like this. Make sure your remote control is working. And then you might see this, batteries not included. Again, non-essential information at the end, okay? Parentheses also could be used to enclose letters or numbers within a sentence. So for example, like this, she made a list of things to buy. So this is a list. I've got my colon, like I talked about before. Letter A, toothbrush. B, clothes. C, books. Or some people might put numbers here. She made a list of things to buy. Number 1, toothbrush. Number 2, clothes. Number 3, books. We would go ahead and put the parentheses around those numbers if you're going to make a list like that. Okay? All right, I think that's about it for the punctuation. So, I mean, I know there's a lot with this particular lesson, 5th and 6th graders, but everything that I just talked to you about is found on the first page of that sheet for the week. So if you want to use that sheet for the quiz later on this week, please, by all means, please feel free to do it. There's a lot of information on that sheet to help you remember what's going on. But if you have any questions on it, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm here to help you. Go back, watch the video again to clarify any of those examples that are there. So I'm here to help you all week long. Again, you can use that first sheet that has kind of those helpful hints on it for your quiz later on this week. So good luck with your lesson for today. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm here for you. And this is the last video of the school year. Yay! So I hope it was beneficial, and we'll see you next time.